Hey guys, YouTuber here. Alright, now here I am continuing to look at these obscure 2000s Disney films. And next up, this is going to be a review for The Kid. So, yeah, so I know that there have actually been quite a few films with the title The Kid. There was also a film from 2010 that was called The Kid, as well as a film called The Kid in 2019. So yeah, due to just other movies having this title The Kid, over the time this movie has kind of gotten some distinction and just been labeled as Disney's The Kid, just so it's better identified. So yeah, so yeah, so but yeah, this is the Disney film The Kid. So for those of you that are kind of confused, used about if you're seeing the title, seeing The Kid. Yeah, yeah. So this film, yeah, this is another film that really just seems absolutely obscure now, because really just I really don't really hear anybody really talking about this film, especially when it comes to Disney films that are being released during this time. I know I said Dinosaur was released the same year, so yeah, Dinosaur was another one of these films. But yeah, this was still during the time when films The Emperor's New Groove came out that year, and there were some other films that were coming out during this time. Now, really were getting some recognition. But yeah, this film was just one that really just nobody really seems to talk about. Now, because even back when this film was originally released, I didn't really hear anybody really talking about it at all, especially when they were talking about Disney films. So yeah, so this is a film that just this really just didn't really leave much of an impact with people. And yeah, so and it just kind of just came out and then just really just fell into obscurity, and nobody really talks about it. Even Nostalgia Critic, or Doug Walker, he hasn't even made a Disney December review for this movie yet. So yeah, and he has actually made Disney Summer for quite a few of these films that I really do have that I'm going to be talking about throughout the month. He's actually talked about a lot of these, but this is one that he has not talked about. So yeah, so that should tell you something right there for how obscure this film really is. Yeah, but yeah, and this film, it did kind of receive a very mixed reaction when it came out. I mean, yeah, both critics and audiences were really just split on this film. Some people liked it and some people didn't. Some critics really uh criticized this film with calling the message that it's sending annoyingly simplistic. So yeah, so oh yeah, so the film really is not for everybody. I get the feeling that probably older audiences wouldn't really get into this film. But yeah, for a younger audience, I was about 6 years old when this film came out. So yeah, when I saw it, I didn't really mind it. Its message was something that I really hadn't seen before, and I really do feel for younger audiences, it's the first time they really are seeing this kind of story be done. And yeah, so yeah, for a younger audience, I really think that the younger audiences will get more enjoyment out of this film than the older audiences would. I remember, yeah, I did. This was a film that I really did watch quite a lot growing up, and I did like it. Yeah, I really did enjoy the film for the most part. I mean, I did like the story that the film had. I really did think that for a Disney film, it was actually kind of deep for a Disney film to really do this kind of story, because it's something that I really don't think a whole lot of kids would quite understand it. Yeah, it was interesting to see a Disney film really do a film and tell this kind of story. Yeah, the film story, it's kind of similar to just pretty much the story of A Christmas Carol. What it really is about is there's this a guy that he really is just a pretty big jerk, but then yeah, then he really just really his younger self comes to the future in his time, and it really just really makes him really think about why his younger self is really there, and yeah, and what it's really about is really just the getting him to really remember some stuff, to really try to change history, and really just change his ways, so he doesn't head down the path that he's going down right now. So yeah, and I do think that overall, for a film geared to a younger demographic like this, I think it does tell the story overall relatively well. I mean, Yeah, there's nothing like absolutely like groundbreaking about this film. Like it's no masterpiece or anything, but yeah, for like a movie of this type, and for like the audience that it's geared towards, I think that it does work fine enough. Like I think that probably like this film really did did deserve like more recognition than it got because yeah, this film, like, I really did like it, and yeah, like I said, I just really do think that like they tell the story overall pretty well for like the tone that this movie does have. Yeah, and overall, I do think that it is like but overall, it is a pretty solid film. Yeah, so yeah, like I said, it really is just like Bruce Willis is the star of this film, and he plays like he plays like a 40-year-old consultant who is like pretty abrasive, rude, and mean to like his workers and his fellow clients and stuff. But then yeah, then like over time, then like I said, he gets a like his like his younger child self ends up coming to his time, and then yeah, then he kind of like at first he thinks that maybe like he is supposed to like really try to like change like his past to really like make it so like he doesn't really end up like living the life that he did that really like led him to really be like this. But then yeah, then over time, then like in like the last third or so of the movie, then it really is shown that what like his younger self is really there for. So yeah, so an interesting twist on that where it makes you like really think that uh you're like you're supposed to do one thing, but then you realize that the intention is really like something completely different than what you originally thought of. So yeah, so a nice little twist for this movie to really do something like that. Yeah. So yeah, so overall, like I do think that the movie overall is pretty solid. It does have a pretty good cast. Like I said, it stars Bruce Willis, and it also has Spencer Breslin, Emily Mortimer, Lily Tomlin, G. McBride, Gene Smart, and yeah, and I think that everybody does just fine in the film. Like no like Academy Award winning performances or anything, but yeah, I do think that overall everybody does do a fairly solid job in this film. So yeah, Bruce Willis does do like a pretty good job as the main character of the film, Russ. Yeah, like he does a really good job, like as the film starts, really being the really just like a, a pretty big jerk to everybody that he knows. Well, whether it is like his fellow coworkers or his clients or whatever the case may be, he does do a really good job at really just being like such a jackass like that. Yeah, and Spencer Breslin overall, like as the younger version of Bruce Willis's character, I do think that overall, like, he really is able to really get the mannerisms down to really pretty much like act as the exact same way, hey, as like Bruce Willis does in the film. Even if he can get like kind of annoying at times, because yeah, there's like times where he's like just yelling and just like kind of just like whining at points, and like it can get like kind of annoying at points. But yeah, overall he does do a pretty solid job. Yeah, this film did kind of like a kick off like kind of like a career that Spencer Breslin would have with Disney Simber or for the next several years because of course like after this like Spencer Breslin like would be in like other Disney movies, like of course he was like in the second and third Santa Claus movies as Curtis, and he was also in that Disney Channel movie, The Ultimate Christmas Present, which I've talked about before. He was also in the Disney Channel movie, You Wish, and yeah, and he was like in like a couple of other Disney films for like the next several years after this film. Yeah, so I guess like this really did like kickstart a career with Disney for Spencer Breslin. Yeah, and everybody else in the film, I think they do like pretty solid as well. Well, so yeah. So really just yeah, the film like I said, like it's no groundbreaking masterpiece or anything, but I mean, it really does it really is overall I think a solid film, even if like there is one scene in the movie which is really kind of infamous among me, but yeah, I'll talk about that later. Yeah, but yeah, the film overall it is pretty solid. Like I saw it a whole bunch of times growing up, and yeah, and I probably will still watch it a lot more or in the future. So yeah, so it really is like a, a really like a film that I have really always enjoyed, and like I said, I just really do feel that this film really does deserve like more recognition than it got before. So yeah, so yeah, so overall, yeah, like I said, it's a pretty solid film. So I would probably give the film around probably like 3 stars out of 4. So, yeah, it is overall. I think it is a pretty good film and worth more recognition. All right. So let me just talk about the film. Yeah. So as the film starts off, it shows like there's a red biplane taking off into the air, and the score, like in the movie, like whenever like you see the plane, it is like a really awesome score. Like whenever you see like the plane taking off, yeah, and yeah, but the pilot of the plane wasn't really revealed until like the end of the movie. Yeah, so you really didn't know like who was really flying the plane, yeah, and yeah, during like the opening credits of the movie, like it showed Russ Stewart, who was played by Bruce Willis, is like an image consultant, and it shows that he's just like very rude to everybody. Like he was rude to like some woman in a store, and then yeah, then it just showed like how he can be like very rude to his clients. Stuff like there was one point where he was visiting one of his clients, and his client was like crying, and he was just like mocking her crying and stuff like that. Yeah, yeah, and like, and as this whole thing was going on, like this opening montage during the credits, you know, it just like kept cutting to like the plane just flying in the sky and over the city and everything. Yeah, and then yeah, then it showed them like Russ was like on a plane next to this woman that was flying to Los Angeles for a news anchor job. Her name was Deidre Lefevre, who's played by Jean Smart, and yeah, and she was like just like asking Russ a bunch of questions, really annoying him. And since like he was a consultant, she was asking him for advice on what she should do for her job, and he was just like giving her advice on what to do, like changing her hair and her makeup and her nails and all that other stuff. Yeah, and yeah, and one thing that I found kind of interesting is like at one point during this part, like as that biplane was like and flying in the sky, like there was one point where it flew past like this place that kind of did look like Ocean Shores from Rocket Power, which I found was kind of interesting. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, and then at one point, as the plane was like flying over Hollywood, it showed like Russ and his car are on a phone call, but then it showed like that plane flying towards him, and it actually like just barely like missed Russ's head. Like Russ had to duck out of the way for the plane to miss him, and then the plane just took off again. But yeah, then and it just seemed like Russ was the only one that could really see the plane, and because he tried to ask somebody else if they saw the plane, and the person just thought Russ was crazy. Yeah, yeah, and then it showed how like Russ was also like a rude to like his other people that he knew as well, like whether it was like his assistant at work, Janet, who was played by Lily Tomlin, who was also the voice actress for Miss Frizzle on the Magic School Bus. So yeah, kind of interesting. Yeah, and also it showed that he had a very strained relationship with his dad as well, because his dad paid him a visit in his office, and his dad was like trying to like asked him to come help him like move some stuff from his house because he was moving. Yeah, but yeah, Russ was just like really brushing it off, and he just sent his dad a check instead. And yeah. Then it cut to like Russ like traveling to. I'm guessing this was like the Dodgers ballpark or something, since this is in Los Angeles. Yeah, where he met up with his coworker Amy, that he's also very rude to, and yeah, and they paid a visit to another one of their clients, who was like the manager of the ballpark, Bob Riley. Yeah, and yeah, then like Russ was talking to Bob, and just it was like revealed that um Bob like had like made a promise to like fund a baseball camp from like the ticket sales that were being made for the season. But yeah, it was shown that like the camp doesn't exist, and it was like Bob really was like getting himself into like legal trouble for this, and so then Russ like recruited some kids to really just get to just hit Bob in the face with a whole bunch of pies and really just get him out of the mess. Yeah, and it showed that like Amy had also filmed it. So yeah, and that night, like as Russ and Amy were like like at dinner, Amy was just like telling Russ that really like what they did was really wrong, and it really wouldn't really like make a difference to what Bob would do. Yeah. And then yeah, then it just showed like Russ like throwing the tape away and leaving the restaurant. But yeah, Amy was just like really fascinated with like what Russ throwing the tape away, and she was just really happy about it. And she was just like trying to really like do something really good. Well, because she felt good, trying to just really just like have Russ look at the moon and stuff. And then afterwards, then just like Russ was like mocking Amy's happiness, and then yeah, Amy then just like was always saying that Russ always manages to outdo himself at being a jerk. But she also gets like a glimpse of the kid in him, like when he threw the tape away, and just makes her really stay for 5 more minutes. Yeah. Then, as Russ was like arriving at home that night, as he was pulling into his house, so he noticed that he noticed a kid that seemed to be like running off from his yard. Yeah. Yeah. Then, and like later on that night, as like Russ was in bed, like he heard some noises going on, and then he saw that like what he thought was like his toy plane from when he was a kid. He thought that his dad brought it over, but then later on, then he found that same kid in his house playing with the plane, and then yeah, the kid then like just ended up running off, and Russ gave chase to him. And then they ended up like arriving at an airfield or somewhere. Yeah, and then yeah, Russ then like saw the kid like running into a diner, which Russ followed him in. But yeah, when Russ came in the diner, he just thought that like nobody else seemed to like see the kid coming in. So yeah, Russ then just like thought that maybe like he was just suffering from hallucinations. Then the following day, Russ paid a visit to a psychiatrist who was played by Dana Ivey. Yeah, and Russ was just like telling the psychiatrist about the supposed hallucinations he was having with seeing the plane and seeing the kid, and yeah, just everything about that. And so the psychiatrist ended up like prescribing him to medication to help relieve him of the hallucinations. Then later on that afternoon, as like Russ was at home, as he was watching like one of his clients who was Nick Chinlund, the actor Nick Chinlund on Larry King. Then, like as he was like getting a number from Janet, then he like noticed that the TV was playing an episode of Ed, Edd n Eddy. And then he found that the kid was there again. Yeah. And then yeah, then Russ was just then about to call the police, but then he started to notice like kind of like recognize the kid, and then like the kid said that the plane was his and his name was Rusty and all that. Then that's when like Russ then like started to like catch on to who he really was, and when showed that like they like shared like some they like had the same birthmark on their neck and a scar on their leg, and were also able to like pop their knuckles by doing this in their fingers. Yeah, and then that's when Russ then like realized that um the kid is actually the young version of him. Yeah, yeah. Russ was like approaching 40 years old, and yeah, at this point, like Rusty was uh, approaching 8 years old. So yeah, this is like a 32-year-old, well, younger version of Russ. Yeah, so, yeah, it's Russ 32 years younger. Yeah. But yeah, Russ then still did think that like he was just hallucinating Rusty. Then he like just tried to take his medication to get Rusty to disappear, but of course it didn't work. Then later on, Rusty then just like realized that is that like everything that he was like hoping for when he grew up, like it wasn't happening. Like he just saw the life Russ lived. That he was an image consultant. He had no dog. He wasn't married. Yeah, and so yeah, Rusty then just like uh just felt that he was gonna grow up to be a loser. Yeah. Oh, I guess I should also mention something else about this. That like one of the running bits throughout this movie, it happened like first in the psychiatrist's office, and then they pointed out again here, was that it showed that Russ like had a twitch in his eye, which would become a bit throughout this movie that we would kind of find out how we got it at the end of this movie. Yeah, but anyway, moving on from this, yeah. Then that night, just Rusty was just like being very loud and keeping Russ awake. And then, as he was like screaming about the moon at one point, then at one point he then was trying to ask Russ why the moon looks orange sometimes, which this also kind of became a little bit of a bit in the movie as well. Hell, yeah, and yeah, Russ didn't even know the answer to the question, so he just like ended up just like blowing it off. Yeah. Then the next morning, like it appeared that like Rusty was gone, and as Russ was meeting up with another one of his clients in some sort of restaurant, Rusty then appeared again, and then Amy met Rusty, and then to cover up who Rusty really was, Russ just like told Amy that Rusty was his nephew. So yeah, then later on, Russ was like really like trying to figure out like what Rusty was really there for, or and he wants to really like try to come up with a way to really fix him up, to really like change up his life. And then as Rusty was like saying how he really didn't want to really uh get beaten up and laughed at all the time, Russ then like felt that that was the reason Rusty was there to and he should just like try to show Rusty how to fight, to really like stop people from making fun of him all the time. Yeah. So then Russ brought Rusty over to another one of his clients' houses, Kenny, who was apparently like a championship boxer. So yeah, Russ asked Kenny to just try to teach Rusty some moves on how to fight. And then Kenny used like his training ring to really like teach Rusty how to box. And just like telling Rusty like just using his two fists, like to use like a 1-2 technique to fight, like punching 1-2. Yeah, but then that's when like Amy was then like starting to notice like a lot of similarities between the two of them. With them, and really just really just like start to really question like who Rusty really is. Yeah. And then at one point, like Amy asked Rusty if he really is Russ's nephew, and Rusty actually said no. But yeah, she asked him like how close he really is to Rusty, and Rusty just said pretty darn. And then Amy came to the conclusion then that Rusty was actually Russ's son, and she was just like just accusing Russ of being a deadbeat dad. But then now Rusty then actually like assured Amy that he was not Russ's son. And then Rusty then was just like tried to convince Russ that they had to tell her the truth, but Russ refused to do it because he just didn't think that Amy would believe them. Yeah, but then as Amy was watching the two of them argue, Amy then like figured out the truth for herself, given that they both like are very identical in their style of arguing and intensity. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Then the following day, Kenny was getting married, but Kenny told Russ that like their scheduled ring bearer ended up being sick, so they brought in Rusty to replace him. Yeah. And then at the wedding, it showed like Rusty walking down the aisle with the rings, but as he was walking, he ended up tripping and kind of like embarrassing Russ. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. I forgot to say earlier on that Russ throwing the tape away back at the restaurant with Amy earlier on, that like kind of like um came into play like later on in the filming, and this is where it's coming around right now. Yeah. Um. Yeah. Getting back to this part. Yeah. Then like during the reception at the wedding, Rusty then like just like was popping the question to Amy, but yeah, Russ like was witnessing it, and then he just like tried to take Rusty and leave, just like saying that Rusty had no business asking that question because Russ and Amy don't really have that kind of connection, but Rusty was trying to say that he does with Amy. Yeah, yeah. And then Russ then like asked Amy what she would have said, and but Amy said that like she was gonna say that she'd have to think about it because even though like she and Russ really didn't have that kind of connection, and like the last 12 hours or so prior, like Amy has like started to have like different feelings and stuff. Yeah, and then yeah, then it then like showed like on a TV through like uh, the news that like they were like talking about like how Bob Briley like invited kids to hit him in the face with pies, and then it showed like that videotape of the kids like just uh throwing pies in Bob's face, and then that's when like it was revealed that like that night when Russ threw the tape away after Amy left, Russ went dumpster diving for it. Yeah. And Amy was just not pleased with Russ's dishonesty about that. And yeah, then she was just like very disappointed when it and just like saw that like Russ hadn't changed at all. And yeah, then she just like told Rusty that what's really sad about this whole thing is that he could have been great. And then yeah, then Amy then just ended up leaving, and yeah, and Rusty wasn't happy about it either, and he just ended up walking off as well. Yeah. Then that night, Rusty just told Russ that they have to change and stop blowing everything. Yeah. Yeah. And that night when they were at home, Rusty then was then just like asking Russ what what does really happen in the time between as he starts to become Russ. Then then just went over everything with him, how he does get good grades and make it through school and wins a scholarship to UCLA and works for a master's degree for 6 years and eventually becomes who he is now. Yeah. And then yeah, then Rusty also ended up telling Russ that he now does understand Russ's job as an image consultant, that he really tells people to really just pretend to be somebody they're not. Yeah. And that night, as Russ was actually watching the news with Deidre on there, it showed that like she ended up taking Russ's advice and really like gave herself kind of a makeover and stuff. Yeah. Then that night, like Russ met with Deidre outside of the news station, and yeah, then he took her out for a coffee and really just talked to her about like what was going on with him. He told her all the story, what was going on, and then yeah, and as they were talking about, Deidre then just like told Russ that maybe um Rusty is really there to help Russ and really help him remember who he is and change him. And yeah, and it was something that that Russ hadn't actually thought of up until then. Yeah. So then, yeah, then later on that night, as Russ then arrived back home, he called up Janet, asked him to cancel all of his appointments the following day, and also asked her to figure out why the moon looks orange sometimes when it rises. Yeah. Then and Russ woke up Rusty that night, and then was just like, and then just like asked him to really help him out with something to that could possibly like help Rusty get back to his time. Yeah. So then after, and like Russ and Rusty were just talking. Like Rusty was just like talking about like the hobbies that he likes to do, and just like what goes on in his life to really kind of like help Russ remember some stuff. Of to really remember something that was really like important to him. That if he could remember, he could get Rusty home. Yeah. And yeah, Rusty was just like talking about like the things that he likes to do, like taking care of caterpillars and everything. And Russ also asked him about their dad, and Rusty was talking about like how his dad does help him work on the car, but also yells at him if Rusty messes up. And there was a time when Rusty had ended up losing a screw, but was afraid to tell his dad, and he's actually was actually carrying it in his pocket. Yeah. Yeah. Then eventually, Rusty then was like talking about like how one of his former friends ended up like turning on him and started hanging out with some of the school bullies that were led by this kid named Vince Kaczynski, and they pick on the kids, and then that's when Russ started to um, uh, remember about everything about that, how like the where the kids hang out, and Rusty did mention how they're really mean to a three-legged dog, and Russ remembered that that dog's name was Tripod, and then he's remembered the event about his fight with Vince Kaczynski on his 8th birthday. Yeah, yeah, and as they were driving through a tunnel, as they emerged from the tunnel, the plane that was like the plane had like made like there were shots of the plane flying through over the city throughout the movie, and then it emerged from the tunnel right behind Rusty. But then it showed that they were back in Rusty's time in 1968, and it showed that they were in a different car. Russ had a different outfit. Yeah, and they were back in Rusty's time. So then Russ rushed Rusty to school to get there before recess ended to change their lives up. Yeah, and then Russ just told Rusty that in this fight he has to remember the 1-2 technique Kenny taught him. Yeah, then when they arrived at the school, Russ just told Rusty what had happened. What happens? How Vince Kaczynski and his friends say something to get Rusty to come back to their hangout, and when he gets and they have a tripod tied up, and then Rusty gets really beaten down, and their lives are pretty much ruined for the next 8 years. Yeah. Then then it showed Vince Kaczynski and his friends coming down, and then they invited Rusty back to their hangout because they said they had a birthday present for him. Yeah. Russ was saying to Rusty that if he doesn't feel comfortable doing it, he doesn't have to do it today. But yeah, Rusty said that like with Russ there with him that he can do it. So then Rusty then went up to Vince Kaczynski and his guys, and they led him back to their hangout, and it showed Russ following him. I find this kind of odd because, I mean, they kind of make it seem like nobody in that time could really see Russ except for Rusty, because it showed Russ just hanging around the schoolyard. Was this a regular thing back then for people to just hang out outside of the schoolyard? Or back then, I mean, I don't really know how things work, but they just make it seem kind of odd the way that they do it here. Yeah. Yeah, but anyway, Then the kids brought Rusty back to their hangout, where it showed Tripod was tied to a pole with firecrackers wrapped around his neck. Heck, the kids were getting ready to light them, but Rusty then just said for them to just let Tripod go and called them dirtbags, and then Vince Kaczynski then just pushed Rusty down and started to beat him up. But then with some persuasion from Russ, then Rusty ended up fighting back and nailing Vince Kaczynski with the 1-2 right in the face, and then pinned him down and got Vince Kaczynski to give up. Yeah. And then Rusty ended up saving Tripod as well. Yeah. Then as Russ and Rusty were celebrating the win, saying that now that they've done that everything would change for them, then Russ then remembered that there was more to the story than just the fight. Yeah. Yeah. Then it showed them Rusty then just sitting in the front office at the school, showing that his ill mom came into the school to get him. Yeah. Then you just heard Rusty being very tearful and just distraught about his mom coming in to get him. It didn't actually show any of it, but you saw it just showed Russ's face. Russ was watching from the outside of the office, and you just saw just the distraught in his face as well. Yeah. And then when Rusty and his mom arrived back home, his dad also came back, and this is what I was talking about. This is the scene that is very infamous among me because this was just a scene I didn't like watching. Yeah, because Rusty's dad was just very upset and just very scared of what was happening to Rusty's mom, and then he just came back outside and then was just really taking his fear out on Rusty. He was just violently grabbing him, just saying that he was just berating Rusty and just causing stress on his mother. And it just showed Rusty breaking down crying. He was trying to tell his dad about the screw, but then his dad just told him to stop crying, and it showed his dad just very aggressively wiping the tears away from his eyes, which is what caused him the twitch that Russ has in his eye, and was just telling him to grow up. Yeah, and yeah, this was like that scene that I just really never liked. Like, you ever have that scene in a movie that just was just very hard for you to really watch and you just never liked seeing it? This was that scene for me. Like, this was the one where I never did like watching growing up, and even now I still don't like watching it. I just really don't like seeing a parent really act this way to their kid. And yeah, and I just, yeah, it was just a scene that growing up I would like just fast forward it, or if I was watching it like with family, I would just like leave the room as the scene was playing. Like, this was just a scene I never liked watching. Yeah, I'll have this scene in the description if you want to watch it for yourself. And yeah, and yeah, it was just like something that I really never liked to see. Yeah, but then Russ then like just was just saying to Rusty that their mom will die before his next birthday. But yeah, he was like, just telling Rusty that what's happening to their mom is not his fault, and that their dad was just like acting that way because he was scared of the idea of raising Rusty by himself. Yeah, yeah, and then Russ took Rusty out to eat for their birthday, and as they were eating that night, then they like we're talking about like how they didn't really change anything for their lives because they they were talking about how they would still have to fight Vince Kaczynski like pretty much all through grade school. And yeah, they would still like look bad throughout the rest of their school years and still wouldn't have a family when 40 and all that stuff. Yeah, yeah. But then it showed that, well, there was a dog that came up to Russ and Rusty. But then the owner then called for the dog and actually called him Chester. Yeah, this was something else because what I was talking about earlier when like Rusty was asking Russ about what he did when he grew up. Yeah, Rusty like always like dreamed of like having a dog named Chester. That was like what I was talking about earlier on. Yeah, and they heard like the dog owner call him Chester here. Yeah, and yeah, then when they heard that, then they just ran outside, and then they saw. Yeah, then they uh, figured out that like the dog's owner is actually a much older version of Russ at the age of 70, and it showed that like he was a pilot that flew planes, and so then that's when like Russ realized that like the older version of himself was really the one behind this whole thing. He was the one that put the plane on his doorstep and all the other stuff to really help him change his ways. Yeah, and it also showed that like he was now married to Amy. So yeah, Amy took Russ up on that proposal. Yeah, and then as the older Russ then and left and took off in the plane. Yeah, Russ and Rusty were then celebrating that they hit it, and Rusty was there to really like help change Russ's ways rather than the other way around. Yeah, and then as they were watching the plane take off, then you just had Russ scream in triumph that he was not a loser. Yeah. Yeah, but then when Russ turned around, it then showed he was back in his time and Rusty was gone. Yeah, so yeah, then Russ then said bye to Rusty and then thanked him. Yeah, and then it showed then the next day how Russ really did change. As Janet paid a visit to his house, like it was like revealed that like a Russ would be at his dad's to help move, and he also like asked for a plane tickets to Hawaii, but then showed that like he actually bought them for Janet. And then Janet was then just screaming in joy, and laughing and stuff. Yeah, and then it ended with like Russ pulling into Amy's house, and then it showed then that Russ had actually brought a puppy with him. Yeah, and then as Russ was just like outside of Amy's door, then Amy then invited Russ into her house. else, yeah, and then yeah, then that's how it ended. But yeah, then as the credits started, like the very first thing shown in the credits, it's like said why the full moon looks orange when it rises. It said the full moon sometimes looks orange when it rises because the light has to travel through more of the atmosphere than when the moon is high in the sky. The blue light waves scatter, but the red light waves make it through. Just in case you were wondering. Yeah. So yeah, I guess like since like this, there were probably like a lot of kids that were wondering why they decided to really just give them the answer, especially since it was mentioned in this movie. Yeah. So yeah. So like I said, I do think that this is overall a pretty solid film. It's not a masterpiece, but yeah, yeah, like for a younger audience, this is probably like the first time they really are like hearing a story like this, and I think it is done in a pretty solid way. So yeah. So well, if you haven't seen it yet, like if you are curious to really you like see like how a story like this would really be done for like a younger demographic, I think that this film is worth a watch. So like I said, 3 stars out of 4. All right. So yeah, so I guess that's all I can really say about it. All right. So this is my review of The Kid. So I hope you guys did enjoy this review. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.